Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Kitabi Karwan podcast. In today's episode, we have with us Neil Borate, Aditya Kondawar, and Aprajita Sharma, the authors of The Big Pull of Dalal Street, an interesting insight into Rakesh Jhunjhunwala's life. All of us are aware that Rakesh often, although its word on the street is that he wasn't fond of the nickname, but has often been referred to as India's Warren Buffett, who started out with a few thousand rupees in his pocket and created one of the biggest wealth empires of this country. Rakesh is celebrated as the epitome of the Indian dream, that dream big, dreams can be achieved. So let's jump right into the interview. Hi guys, welcome to the Kitabi Karwan podcast. I'm really excited to have you guys on, and as usual, I'm very excited to talk about any book that talks about finance or economics. It's a personal area of interest, intersection of two of my favorite worlds. Before we delve in any further into any of this, I'd like to give at least one of you an opportunity to give us a quick 30-second brief as to about the book and why did you guys choose to go about doing this.
Sure. So, Siddharth, thank you so much for having us. This is our first book. We're all first-time authors. So I'll answer why we wrote the book first, and then I'll give a brief about the book. So we essentially wrote it. There's two reasons. The deeper reason is that I think Rakesh symbolizes the Indian dream or the Indian investor's dream. That one in a million people can create wealth on this enormous scale. Obviously the odds are against you, and obviously nobody should try this at home. There are certain things that he did which we'll get into later on, which you shouldn't do. But if you play your cards right, it is possible to create a lot of wealth. And even if you don't reach the level that Rakesh did, it's possible to build wealth at some scale at your level. So that's sort of the deeper reason. The more immediate pressing event was, of course, his passing away last year. And there was a lot of curiosity about him. And so we felt that this was the right time to write this book. Now, what is the book about? So we've divided the book into three parts. The first part is a biography of Rakesh. The second part is three mistakes that he made, three companies that he invested which didn't go right, and three successes, three companies that built his fortune. And what is the story of those companies? And Aditya can talk more about that. And the third is the lessons that you can draw from him, and the lessons that you should not be drawing from him. So that's the broad structure of the book.
Right. So I hope this doesn't come across as a very offensive question, but how did the trio form? I mean, it's I don't know. Do you guys know? And feel free to not talk about it. But do you guys know each other outside of your professional lives, or was this something like, I don't know, you were in touch with the publishing house and they just suggested the three of you write together? It's just a very interesting mix of people. That's why I wanted to get into that as well.
Sure. So I'll answer that. I was actually writing a different book. Penguin had commissioned me to write a different book. And then Rakesh passed away, and suddenly realized that we can wait for the other book, but this one should be written now. And both Aprajita and Aditya are good and old friends of mine. So Aprajita I know professionally. She freelances for Mint, and she written some great articles for us. And Aditya, a fellow Punekar, we've hung out a bunch of times. He's superb with his IPO analysis, and we've also spent a lot of time discussing investment issues. So that's how I know the two of them.
Right. And that just led to the writing of the book, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And we had to produce it in record time, because we wanted to put out as soon as possible. So three people working together, it helped us do it.
Yeah, I'm sure, because it's, I think August 2022 was, and if it's published now, I'm guessing you would have been done by, say, January at the very earliest. But, so, I absolutely love the book. I work in the financial markets myself, and I've always been, any book about financial markets, something that I really always want to get into. And the bit that I actually loved about the book was the fact that it could, even if I wasn't working in the financial markets, or someone who was unaware of how the financial markets worked, could kind of just pick up the book and get through it and understand. You kind of achieved your target of kind of capturing the Indian dream, because a common person who's not aware of things would be able to read it. So did you I know, sort of struggle with it? I mean, because the three of you work in that field and particularly as journalists and someone who does, a lot of analysis work, you're used to working with technical terms and analyzing them, whether it's on the finance, just from a personal finance perspective or from the firms themselves. So was this a struggling bit for you guys as authors to kind of simplify it for the masses or take away things?
Yeah,
Just
so I
set the
think each of us
context.
had our
Sure.
independent struggle. So what I'll do is I'll talk about mine and then we'll go in
Yeah,
sequence.
sure, please.
So my struggle was that I'm a personal finance journalist, not so much a stock market one. They are related fields, but they're not exactly the same.
Mhm.
So I had not historically tracked Rakesh that closely or any stock market investor that closely. So I had to certainly do a lot of research to get up to speed. And Aprajita, that's where Aprajita came in because she is a stock market journalist. She has been interacting with brokers and market participants for a lot longer than I am. So I think I'll pass the baton to Aprajita now, and then Aditya, they can talk about their own struggles.
Yeah, so when Neil told me to start working on this book, so in 2014 is when I first time got to know about Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. And I always followed him. Since very first day of my work, I've been following him closely. So I really wanted to write detailed articles on him, but usually it doesn't, because he doesn't speak to media that much, print media that much, and he would only appear on different TV channels. So all that I could write was about related to things that he said in those interviews. So when I got this opportunity, I was so excited and quickly started reaching out to people connected to Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. And I knew them because I've been following stock market. I've been speaking to all these people. So I knew them. So that part was easier for me. But family did not agree to speak to us. Utpal Seth was the very first person that we approached to start working on the book, but it could not happen. So that was a big major challenge because if family is not speaking to us, then other people connected to him will also say no. That's what happened with us. So those were initial hurdles, but gradually we picked pace. Gradually we thought we have to put it out for larger audience. So it's a lot of content is already there in media. It's just that it's not organized. So why not start doing that? Why not start doing our own research? So me suggested that, and I really loved because we had to do something. We had to start somewhere. Then gradually some people started speaking to us off record. So that's how we approached. But family not speaking to us, I still feel a little bit disappointed about it. But otherwise, everything that we did, it has been really great.
Aditya, what about you? Any bits that you struggled with?
Sure. So, number one said, I think, like you said at the start of the interview, right? All three of us are from a very different background. But I think what really ties us together is that, all three of us try to explain our part of the markets in a very simplistic way. So, for example, if Aprajita is interviewing a management, she'll ensure that she asks all the relevant questions and get the answers in a simple manner. If I talk about Neil, you can see him doing all this amazing threads on personal finance, issues that are very pressing and that will help the common retail investor. I, on the other hand, I'll just take up any stock related issues that I have, or I'll just explain an event in a simple manner. So I think one thing that I'm very happy of what we achieved in the book was we presented it in a very simple manner. In fact, all the reviews that we have gotten in the past 48 hours is that, people who have absolutely zero connection to the stock markets are picking up the book and they're actually binge reading it. I think that's the highest honor a book can get. So extremely happy about that. And coming to the challenges that I faced, of course, Neil and Aprajita are journalists, so they are very very well versed with the style of writing that needs to go into these kind of books, and these guys are extremely seasoned. So just getting into this project, I was a bit scared, but they were the two of them were extremely kind. They literally handheld me, and whenever I was writing a chapter, I used to have a call with them. Ki, "Okay, I'm going to write it this way. This will go here, this will go there," and they used to proofread it. They used to correct my grammar. So that was the first bit. Getting out a journalistic kind of writing. And number two, of course, the kind of stocks that Mr. Jhunjhunwala held. One of the winners was CRISIL. And, it's very sad that CRISIL hasn't really gotten wide coverage like Titan or, say, a Lupin in the financial markets, right? I mean, you would obviously see some analytical reports quarter on quarter on them, but nobody has written a comprehensive book or a comprehensive article on the rise of CRISIL.
Right.
And it's a very great journey that CRISIL has had. It's one of India's and the world's one of the world's premier rating institutions, right? And coming to the losers as well, there wasn't much history available for A to Z as well. So I had to really study the company since inception. I had to literally create a mind map of events. Ki, okay, this is the IPO, this is the pre-IPO, this is the listing, this is when RJ bought more stake, this is when events started happening. So it was like a proper equity research kind of a thing for one of the companies. Jahan pe I literally wrote down everything and then I started synthesizing it. It was a bit challenging because in equity research, if you have a hypothesis, right, you can actually go out in the market and test it. You can talk to a few people. You can look out for a few reports. Matlab, mota moti, you can just compare notes, or you can just see if you are thinking in the right direction or not, right? But for one of his companies where he lost a lot of money, A to Z Infra and Engineering Services, there was no information available at all. So it was a bit of a challenge, but I mean, thankfully, again, thanks to Neil and Aprajita, I got to speak to a few people. I got to know of a few events. So I got to know, okay, this is what had happened, and then I could connect the dots. I mean, these were my two biggest challenges.
So that's quite interesting to get at, and I would talk a bit more about those. But something, Aprajita, that you mentioned something. That was a question. I was just telling Neil and Aditya this before we started recording, that my father's also a stockbroker, and he read the book when it also came in for the review. And one of the questions that he wanted me to ask was this: that why were there no more conversations with the family, or say with RK Damani, who Rakesh ji considered his guru, but I'm assuming he was also fell in that category of people who weren't too willing, which is somewhat in line with how he generally has been. He's very media shy in general, but that in itself would have been an insane challenge, right? I mean, and even when I went through your forward, something that really, to be very honest, something I was very apprehensive of right from the beginning is you mentioned in the forward itself that none of you met Rakesh initially before his passing, and that kind of, I mean, this coupled with the fact that the family refused to talk to you, did that not create a certain, I mean, the book came out excellently. Like by the end, my fears had gone away. But I'm quite curious about how did you power through this, right? I mean, these are two major challenges at the outset of going about such a journey that you've not interacted with. I apologize for my insensitivity, but with the subject of your book and the fact that all the people who could possibly be the best source of information on him are refusing to talk to you. So, I mean, what kind of convinced you that it's still worth doing this project or like going ahead with this writing journey?
I think he'll be the right person to answer. We have discussed it among us.
Right. So there's a couple of different things here. One is that the book is not a biography. Had it only been a biography, then you're right, it would have been an almost insurmountable challenge. But only 1/3 of it is biographical. And thankfully, Rakesh has said so much over the years that is there in the public domain. It's scattered all over the place. There are hundreds of interviews of his in different print newspapers, on different channels. That there is no dearth of material. It just had to be put together and formulated into one coherent narrative.
Right.
So that's the second sort of consolation or comfort that we had. And some people were willing to talk. So we didn't meet RK Damani, but we did meet Ramesh Damani. We did meet some other people who did speak to us off record also. So we had sufficient number of inputs from different sources. Aprajita, you can add to that.
Yeah, it was never even if we did not meet him, he did not meet so many journalists. He would only speak to ET Now or CNBC, but we have been following him quite closely. So it doesn't matter if we haven't met him personally. And people who knew him personally, all this while they did not come up with the idea to write about him.
Right.
So there are no such mainstream books on him.
Absolutely.
So why not give it a try? Because we had access to those people who knew him closely. It's just that family did not participate. Then obviously Rakesh Jhunjhunwala being a reserved person, his close coterie would also would want to
Right.
maintain that distance from media. And
Right.
media, about media, there is this perception about media, people shy away, away
Right.
from speaking to media. So it wasn't under our control. But I believe any other journalist who would knew him quite closely would have faced the same
Absolutely.
challenges. So we got an opportunity and we went ahead with it. And it doesn't matter if we did not meet this. It doesn't matter.
And one more thing I'd like to add,
Mhm.
a lot of the times when the subject is collaborating with you or the subject's family is collaborating with you,
The
they want to
narrative
control the
changes.
narrative. They want to
Mhm.
control the
Mhm.
narrative.
Mhm.
We would have lost the freedom to be critical. And we have been critical in various parts of the book. So
Right.
in a way, it's a blessing that we didn't have that kind
We
of setup.
need that balance.
Right. Yeah. And actually, that's one of just just to kind of add my insight on that. The fact that the three of you wrote the book, it actually doesn't come across that there are three different authors, and that's actually a major compliment. That it flows beautifully. That you would never realize it's three different people working on three different sections, stitching the book together, right? And absolutely agreed with you that the narrative control is something that would have been maybe like it's a silver lining that kind of helped the book be as good as it is. And in fact, I think from again, one of the only people who I my personal life who I know who's already read the book. So a lot of people have ordered it, but my father's read the book, and his favorite chapter of the book was the chapter about what not to learn from Rakesh, right? Which I think which brings us to one of the most interesting things Rakesh talks about, right? Rakesh in his life and in all his media interviews has always spoken about how a common individual should always be participate on the investing end of things and not as a trader. And his quintessential argument of being like बाप whiskey पीता है बेटे को मना करता है is why मैं trading करता हूँ but बाकियों को नहीं बोलना is I mean it's always been a hallmark. So I mean but when it came down to kind of framing what not to learn from Rakesh, right? I mean this primary lesson is something he spoke about himself that please don't take this from me. Do not do this that I do. This is a bad thing that I do, right? But the other things that you guys picked up, was this I don't know, did you feel again like you're going up against you're essentially saying that what this perhaps like the Indian Warren Buffett, like that's as much as that term doesn't encapsulate what Rakesh stood for, but the greatest investor India has seen in its history. And it takes courage to kind of put out a permanent record saying that, what, three of us are explicitly calling him out that this is something he did incorrectly. Please do not do this. So, I know, again, there would have been some fear, I'm assuming, while putting this down. Not in terms of public backlash or anything, but just in terms of how can we stand by what we are saying at this point of time. So, was there any, I don't know, special research that kind of went into it? Maybe you made sure that you ran this by some experts about, like investors or in management, that, is this something, should we put this down in the book as a mistake or not, or something like that?
Yeah, so that's where our personal finance knowledge helped us. And it
Right.
was the easiest chapter to write about. So we did not face any challenges because being personal finance writer, we understand what
Mhm.
retail investors want, what common
Right.
people, what they should know about stock market and the
Right.
mistakes that they do. So it's
Right.
not that things that we noted down, we jotted down. It's not about things that Rakesh Jhunjhunwala did incorrectly. It's not
Mhm.
about that. It's
Mhm.
about what he did, but you should not. He could
Right.
succeed in doing
Fair.
those. He would have succeeded in following those principles, but you may not because you
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
understand it that well, and you may
Mhm.
not have time to track stock market the way he did.
Right.
So first mistake what people should not follow is about leverage trading. That you
Mhm.
should not trade
Mhm.
taking leverages. So this is common knowledge that people should not take leverage
Right.
when they are trading. And even if you do, then you have to be associated with market for longer hours so that you track it and you understand it on your own, and you are
Mhm.
not relying on someone else's advice. So
Right.
that was first thing that normal common people should not follow. And second was about small cap stocks. So
Right.
Rakesh Jhunjhunwala had time and ability to
Mhm.
analyze small cap companies, but
Mhm.
normal people may not have. And even he had access to CEOs and the CEOs working with
Mhm.
those companies. But a retail investor will not have access to such people. So
Right.
how would you know about these companies? And these companies are quite pro at even manipulating their numbers. So even
Absolutely.
public information out there may not be correct. So
Mhm.
all these things common people should not follow, and also health. that the kind
Right.
of it's not just about investment. You have
Of
to
course.
maintain your health. So that was another point that we highlighted,
Right.
that you should not follow Rakesh Jhunjhunwala on these books first. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Just I have one final question about the book before I jump into a little bit of more of your life as readers and writers. Aditya, you mentioned one of the interesting feedback that you've been getting is a lot of people are binge reading the book of late, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that crossed my mind as well. Like, I mean, it's a relatively smaller book in terms of its size
Yeah.
and the pages. So, was that a conscious decision you guys made to kind of make the book more accessible? And I mean, can we like expect something more like a more detailed uh, journey in the future from you guys, or is it just that this is what you wanted to put out and that's it?
So I'll just take up part one, and part two, I think Neil or
Right.
Aprajita can take it up. So, of course, it was it was a collective decision and a conscious decision by us to,
Mm.
see Rakesh Jhunjhunwala is a celebrated stock market investor, right? But his story should not just inspire stock market investors, but everyone in India or in the world, right? Because the core thing that he achieved was just starting from a couple of lakh rupees, right? He
Yes.
went up to the thousands of crores, right? So I mean, this is one story that we wanted to tell everyone, not just stock market investors, right? And that's why the language has been kept so simple, so that any layman or any person who is not even remotely connected to the markets can read it and get inspired. See, the
Right.
whole mission of the book was to just synthesize and analyze his detailed life in a very simple word, so that everybody can read it and everybody can get inspired. As simple as that.
Right.
And part two, I think Neil Bhau can take it over here.
So I'll just supplement part one by something that my first boss, Virendra Kumar of Value Research, told me, that if you can say something in treat words like they are money. Say what you have to say in as few words as you possibly can. And I hold that dear in my day-to-day writing also. So we've deliberately kept it very, very to the point. We don't want to spend even one more second of the reader's time than is necessary to understand the subject.
Okay.
On the second question, whether we do a more detailed version, a sequel or not, well, never say never. I hope that if not a sequel, then something related does come up that we can do.
Yeah, so I'll add to it. So I still, when I'm speaking to different people, I still tell them that if you know someone who knew Rakesh Jhunjhunwala closely, then let me know. I would love to speak to that person. So that if ever our update to the book comes out, reprint comes out, then I would love to add whatever things that we could search upon or whatever new information we have gathered. I would love to write about it, and I'm actively moving in that direction. I'm still reporting on it.
Loving Neil's and yours never say never approach to this. but that's actually a very interesting thing, and because it reminds me of something I heard ages ago and I haven't thought of in a while. This was back in 2012, I think, when Lord Jeffrey Archer had come to India to launch one of his newer books. And at that event, he spoke about his own writing experience and his message for budding writers, right? And which I'm guessing applies to like both fiction and non-fiction end, is that the toughest thing in the world is to write less. A writer can always write more. It's narrating the same thing in lesser words is the most difficult thing. In fact, at that event, he put out a challenge for all budding writers. He's like, if you have a story in mind, challenge yourself to tell it in exactly 100 words. If you can do that, you will be a very successful writer. Otherwise, you really need to kind of improve your skills and get to it. So in that sense, I think you guys nailed it by managing a succinct book which appealed to a lot of people. But now I'm going to take a step back from the book and kind of bring the focus on you guys, right? So it's actually a two-part focus. The first one's going to focus on you guys as writers. So this is something I end up asking almost every writer I meet, is that I've always met people who write in two forms, broadly in two forms, right? First one is what I call the Ernest Hemingway form, one of his most misattributed quote, but yeah, nevertheless attributed to him, is that write drunk, edit sober. He was essentially trying to encapsulate that, write whatever you feel like, when you have that source of inspiration, you put it down, or you hear something, you just note it down on a napkin and create your work out of it, and then kind of collect it and coerce it together. And there's this other school of thought, which is a more organized one. Like, I'll get up in the morning or sit at my desk with I know I require silence and 3 hours of work from 6 to 9 or in the evening, whatever. So I want to know just quickly from each one of you, like which bracket of writing do you fall into, and uh, maybe one quirky thing about your writing process each. Like, I mean, something weird that you guys end up doing when you just need to get your work done.
So, okay, I'll go first. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I definitely fall in the first camp where I basically just I throw everything down in one word article where it's just all random thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It's all disorganized. Editing is out of the world. Font size is out of the world. It's all just a khichdi, right?
Right.
And then when I have jotted down, I have researched everything. Then I just try to make try to make a flow of it. For example, I was responsible for the stock parts of the book, right? So I just jotted down, whenever. So my normal job also entails equity research, right? So
Mhm.
at one point of time, you're doing your own job, and suddenly you find a fact about one of the stocks. So you randomly open the document and you just paste it there.
Right.
And then finally on the weekend when you have time, or at midnight or at early mornings when you're actually working on the book, you open the document and then you try to make a sense of it. So I mean, definitely it's a very disorganized way of working for a person like me who tries to be organized in every single thing.
Mhm.
I'm very particular about how I approach things, but I mean, definitely looking at that kind of work, I was angry at myself, but it is what it is. You were not in that kind of mindset in the middle of the day, in the middle of your
Yeah.
job, where you would actually try to organize
Mhm.
things, right? You would be just
Mhm.
like chalo kuch to, like you have found a data point, you will just paste it there and just close the
Right.
document, right?
Right.
And quirky thing about me, well, so I just try to storify everything. I love telling stories.
Mhm.
So even in the book, what we have kind of done is that we have tried to storify everything.
Mhm.
I believe that people love stories and people love a good story. I mean, yeah, that's about it. Nothing,
Okay.
nothing else quirky. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I belong to both. So I prefer my about quirkiness is about that I prefer working early in the morning. So
Okay.
I would get up 3 a.m., 4 a.m. and I'll start writing.
That's
It's
I
quite
think some might argue that's not early morning but late night, but okay.
but I consider it early morning. Since childhood, if I
Right.
have early morning, I mean, if we have exam any day, tomorrow morning I have an exam, so
Mhm.
I prefer sleeping by 8, 9 and getting up at 3 and then whatever I have to do. So that's how I studied, prepared for exams, and now I follow the same in all my
Yeah.
writing. So even if I'm writing a journalistic article, then also I prefer doing it early in the morning. So I'll do
Mhm.
my research. I usually prefer jotting down points. So whatever I
Mhm.
have to say, I will create a synopsis of it. 10,
Mhm.
15 pointers that yes,
Mhm.
these are key points that I would want to include in my article or in whatever I'm
Mhm.
writing about. And then early morning, I'll jot down. In one go, I usually do it. And then
Mhm.
I give it a rest for a while. I don't, and then maybe after a couple of hours. That can very well happen during even afternoon hours. So then I
Mhm.
edit it. So that's how I do it. First I'll write it, then I'll let it rest for a while, and then up with fresh mind and again approach it, go through it again, doing my editing, and then sending out to wherever I should be. And while
Okay.
writing this book, I remember that so in September I had gone for a fellowship in Singapore. So I was there for 3 weeks,
Mhm.
and we had decided to put out at least one third of the book, at least first draft, a bit
Mhm.
of it by end of September. So during those 3 weeks, I could not work much.
Mhm.
Right at back end of my fellowship, I was there at hotel, and entire day and night I kept working writing because I kept collecting information, just that I
Mhm.
did not get time to write it. So
You
I
know,
wrote major part of it, 3,000, 4,000 words in maybe in 1 or 2 days I finished doing it.
this reminds me so much of my college time. So much of my college time.
So
But
yeah,
this
this
is
happened.
very interesting to know that. And Neil, what about you?
Yeah, so I think we've gone beautifully in sequence. So I am pretty organized in my writing and how I schedule things.
Right.
Because I think I always have the editor sitting at the back of my mind. And I'm professionally an editor, and I know that मेरे को लिखना है, so I only have to edit my work. So from the get-go, I try to minimize the editing that has to be done. Quirk, I would say I'm a very cliched cafe writer, cafe author. So like Pune cafes have had enough of me. So I wrote most of my book there in different cafes.
That's sick. And the reason why I asked this question, right, and it actually goes to the heart of why I launched this podcast to begin with. I'm a very avid reader, and I've absolutely love to read. And I think it adds to a reader's experience to kind of know how a writer approaches his or her work and the way they organize and kind of go about their writing process. I don't know. I think it adds, even if it's on the non-fiction end of things, say like, I don't know, it would I'll probably have a smile on my face next time I read Neil's work, thinking that he was sitting in a cafe writing this, or like maybe thinking that, oh, Aprajita was up at 3:30 typing this out, probably like an hour before her deadline. That's the way she approaches things, and that kind of adds to a reader's experience about taking away the work that they're reading. But that actually brings me to the other bit that I wanted to talk to you guys about. That I also like to believe that most writers are voracious, or if not voracious, at least readers as well. Like it's how carpenter would sharpen his or her tools like the axe. Maybe like writers always fall back on books to kind of sharpen their work. So I just want to know each of yours reading journeys. Like, are you guys readers? Do you like to read? What kind of work do you like to read? And the second part of the question being that how has reading kind of tied into not just your life as a writer, right? Like, I mean, a writer, when I say writer, I mean it for the book, because as journalists, I'm sure you guys write for the print media as well. But in your so-called other lives, right, as an equity analyst or as a deputy editor, as like a freelance journalist, how has reading aided these professions?
Sure. So I think I'm probably the oldest person here, and I'm pointing this out because the authors that I began my life with, probably I'm not sure if most of you have heard of them. So Enid Blyton was very popular when I was a kid. She went out of fashion, so people who are 10 years younger, 5 years younger, they haven't heard of her. So Enid Blyton was my childhood.
I don't know how young you think I am, Neil, but I have read all of Enid Blyton's work.
So I began with her. My favorite book though is Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, and I love it because most of it is thoughts. Like it's one person thinking something and that coming in the book instead of the typical conversation or actions or other things that dominate usual fiction books. Daphne has this way of getting into somebody's mind. And the non-fiction side, a lot of the books that I read are recommended by Aditya. So two of the recent ones, one is Red Roulette, which is written by a Chinese businessman who became extremely rich. He amassed a huge fortune through using connections, through using jugaad, the old-fashioned way. But a lot of people in China were doing that, and they were able to create wealth. And suddenly, the political winds changed. Somebody else came in power, and he had to flee the country. Then the other book that I read recently, again on Aditya's recommendation, was More Money Than God, which is about hedge funds and the people who start them and the crazy stuff that they did. So usually financial books, but with drama thrown in.
Right. That's quite interesting, the book and the example, the book about the Chinese businessman you mentioned, because for how much soever we are at odds with that country, काफी ज़्यादा similarities. Like this could very well be the story of an Indian businessman, जुगाड़ से पैसा कमाया, and then political establishment changed, so had to flee the country. But yeah, sorry, please continue.
Yeah. So Aprajita, go ahead.
Okay, you start. Okay, so I started reading all those Champak, Bahalhans, Nandan. So my father,
Yes.
he reads a lot. It's just that he reads mostly in Hindi. So in childhood, I only had access to Hindi books, and gradually, after fifth or sixth or seventh, eighth class, then I had access to English books. Then I started reading and written all these books and Harry Potter, etc. But initially, I only read all these Champak, Bahalhans, Nandan sort of books. And later on, I would read P.G. Woodhouse comedy. So I loved reading comedy a lot. So I would read P.G. Woodhouse books. And when I started, when more by 11th or 12th class, and when my graduation started, then I moved to reading non-fiction, because then when you're studying too hard, then whenever I have time, then I don't want to spend it reading fiction. So that's how now I feel that I shouldn't have done that. I should have focused on fiction also. But I had this idea in
Right.
mind that if I have a free time, why not read non-fiction and gain more knowledge rather than reading fiction?
A very
So
productive
it
approach to
continues.
life, I must say.
And it continues even now. When
Right.
if I have time, then I'll only be reading all finance books. And our profession is such that we are reading all day. We're reading, writing, etc. So in free time, again, we have to read. So all so lately I haven't been reading much books per se, but and now I've moved to motivational books as well. So
Okay.
Choice is one. I won't be able to recall the name of the author. Choice. It's the lady that has written this book. It's about herself and her life, that how he moved on, and she faced the different challenges in life and how he overcome. I suggest this. I will definitely recommend this book to you all to read it. That it's an awesome book and motivation book. And then Michael Lewis book about finance. I love reading Michael Lewis. Flash
Of
Boys.
course.
When I read Flash Boys, I was overwhelmed. I was amazed at it, the way he wrote it, all these difficult finance topics. Because I like simplifying topics. Whatever I'm
Right.
writing about, finance is a difficult subject. The way he simplifies things, and the way again Aditya told about reading stories. So the kind of stories that he tells, it's
Mm,
amazing. And then Big Shot again,
of course.
amazing book to read.
Right.
So all these books, and now that now a lot of people keep sending out their books to me, so I
Right.
read those books as well. So
Right.
very recently, Anish Teli, I'm sure you both are aware of him. He sent me his book. It's about factor investing. So I'm reading that right now. So that's how I mostly read finance,
Mhm.
and if I have some time, then also motivational books.
Aprajita, your reading approach is the exact opposite of what I had. Like back in college, I went to law school and now I work in the finance market. So it's largely similar in the sense that for work also I have to read a lot, like annual reports and all that jazz, right? And in law school, tremendous amount of reading. But my thing was that okay, after all of that, I want to go because I'm reading non quote unquote non-fiction all day. I want to go to fiction at the end of it. That
Hmm.
is thing. But yeah, it's however it works out for people to be. And I genuinely empathize with your last bit that you have been getting books to read because that's one of the perks of like running a podcast. You kind of keep getting books all the time to read. It's a very fun process. Aditya, on to you.
So I read a lot. I think
Mhm,
this is one process that I've been following from 2019.
mhm,
So I think the reason why I started reading books a lot was because I wanted an escape.
mhm.
Our novel jobs are also such that you're not 24/7, but almost half a day you're into research, and then
Mhm.
actually it happens with me that your mind is constantly crunching numbers, it's constantly thinking,
Right.
अरे इसका time क्या है, उसका time क्या है, इसका margin क्या
Mm,
है, and then you actually need an escape, right? So
mhm,
the two things that I follow in my lifestyle without fail consistently, I think 320, 330 days out of 365 days is that in the morning I usually go for a run or a workout or I play sports, and in the night before I go to bed I would usually read like for 15 to 30 minutes.
mhm.
So it's a very funny thing how I came to reading, right? I mean, one of the reasons was, of course, because I wanted an escape, but the main reason was because the first job that I had was a night shift, and
Mhm.
when I shifted back to day shift after a year, of course, your body takes a lot of time to
Right.
adjust. So the last problem that I had for shifting to proper day schedule was that I wasn't getting proper sleep. So somebody told me try meditation. I tried that, didn't help. It didn't help me. And somebody just out of the blue suggested that try reading a book before you go to bed. Don't look at his mobile screen.
Right.
Don't talk on the phone. Just sit silent in a room. Read a few pages and go to sleep. And it was a life changer for me. It really helped me.
Mhm.
I picked up my reading habit from there. Didn't continue it for a few years, and then again when I started my
Mhm.
equity research job, I took it up. I read a variety of books, you name it, and I read it. I read philosophy, I read mythology, I read motivation. Most of the books that I read are on business, business people or the making of companies. So I think I have read books on Hero, Maruti, Titan. I'm a big Tata fan, so I have read all the books that are there out there in the market on the Tata Group.
Right.
Absolutely love their history. Absolutely love
Mhm.
the leaders that have come out of there. Some of the books Neil and Aprajita have recommended. I really love Michael Lewis, the way he writes. I think all of his books read like a thriller movie, right? You can't really keep it down.
Yeah.
So I mean, his style of writing is just amazing. I mean, he's such a gifted writer, right? I mean, in fact, one of my bucket list items is to meet him.
Mhm.
And so lately, the book that I'm currently reading is called The Idol Thief. It's about the theft of really old artifacts of temples that were being stolen in India in the past few decades.
Mhm.
So there were a few smugglers who were selling this out to museums, and it's a very nice story, right? Iske pehle I was reading the story of Microsoft.
Mhm.
And if I had to recommend three books to you, number one would be Elon Musk by Ashley Vance,
Mhm.
because I think that Elon Musk is the most misunderstood person on this planet. People call him mad, people call him stupid, which he is, to be honest. I mean, he is mad, but I won't call him stupid. But
That's actually a
you
fair
actually, yeah.
classification.
But I think even I was so misunderstood about him, right? I always saw him as a lunatic. But when you actually read the book, right, you read the kind of journey that he has been through, right? I mean, we all know about the PayPal mafia. They sold their
Mhm.
company, and people bought big cars, people bought big houses, and there's this guy who got a big payout, and he was already ready with his next idea. uh, you know, there was a time when he had a choice to save either one of the two companies, either SpaceX or Tesla, and he chose to save both of them. He invested half of whatever money he had.
Mhm.
There was a time in his life for when continuously for 3 years he had multiple rocket failures, but he persisted and just looked at where he is. He's literally changing the world.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, of course, Elon Musk is one guy you need to read about,
Mhm.
and just clear that misconception.
Mhm.
Number two, I would say the Tatas, how a company built how a family built a company and a nation. So
Mhm.
that's one of my all-time favorite Tata books. So it basically starts from the very beginning. It tells you how the Tata Group came into being, how the Taj Mahal Hotel came into being, how Telco came into being,
Mhm.
how a lot of leaders are groomed there. Then it talks about Ratan Tata. And the third book, I would say Tuesdays with Maury.
Yeah.
So it's a very feel good book. I'm sure that you'll be all teary eyed by the end of it, because the book really talks about the importance of life and time. Uh, I mean, sounds very cliche, but you just have one life and all that nonsense. But you actually read the book and you realize it that there are much bigger things in your life than just work. You have your friends, you have your family, and it also teaches you that make sure you spend time with them and make sure that you enjoy your life truly. And to answer your last question, how does reading actually help us or help me? I think the analogy that I always give. People usually ask me that you're from the finance field, so why do you read books from other fields? So I believe that it's extremely important that the kind of people you meet, the kind of content you consume, the kind of books you read, right? It should be extremely diverse.
Mhm.
So the story that I usually tell is that Steve Jobs took a calligraphy class, right, when he was at
Yes.
the Reed University,
Right.
and that actually inspired him to create that user interface for the Apple iPhone.
The
So
fonts
if
of
correct, yeah. So
the
the font,
Macintosh.
so the font was inspired from his calligraphy class, and
Mhm.
that actually defined Apple.
Mhm.
So if you talk about Apple today being a $1 trillion company, the font made a very big difference, right?
Right.
The UI, the design, the way the system interacted with its users, it made a very big difference.
Mhm.
I mean, in hindsight today, we know that okay, if he hadn't taken that calligraphy class, maybe Apple design wouldn't have been that edgy or that classy,
Right.
right? So this is the story I always tell people that you never know what you have learned, what you have read, whom
Mhm.
you have interacted with will help you in your life, but it will help you. See,
Mhm.
knowledge once gained does not go to waste, right?
Right.
It will come in handy in some other thing.
Right.
So, number one, it really helps you broaden your mind.
Mhm.
And number two, you should not just limit your thoughts or your intake to just a particular field. Consume content from all the fields, and you never know who can inspire you or what can inspire you. And
Right.
I'll end it with that. Yeah.
Right. That was actually very, very insightful, guys. Thank you so much for this. But unfortunately, we've come towards the end of the podcast, so we're going to wrap it up here. The Big Bull of Dalal Street is out. It's now available in all bookstores, available on Amazon, Flipkart, e-commerce platforms of your choice. Please check it out. I'm 100% sure you love reading this. Even if you're not interested in the finance markets, it's a story that every Indian should read about. And these guys have done a fantastic work at it. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys. This was absolutely lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
you.
Siddharth.
Thank you
Good
so
night.
much,
It's a
Siddharth.
pleasure joining you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please check us out on all our social media platforms. We're available across all podcasting platforms on YouTube, on Instagram. You can find us at the rate Kitabi Karwan on Instagram, or just search Kitabi Karwan on Google or a platform of your choice and you'll find us. We carry out Instagram lives, giveaways, we talk about books, we talk to bibliophiles, talk to authors, and basically try and create a reader's world through all of our platforms. Do check us out and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.